Hello, fellow STEM challenge enthusiasts. I just noticed the weirdest thing when I went to go live. Before I went live, I could hear myself before I could see myself. So sorry if you heard me clearing my throat and adjusting the mic and making crazy sounds there. So welcome to today. What we are going to be talking about was inspired by a post that I made in my Stellar STEM Teachers Facebook group earlier in the week, asking teachers to tell me what were their biggest hangups or their biggest obstacles that were preventing them from doing more STEM challenges in their classroom. And some of the items on the list were time, materials, training or PD, ideas, and support from their administrators. And they kind of came out pretty much in that order. So most people cited time as their biggest obstacle. We're going to talk a little tiny bit about that. And then for materials, training, and ideas for today, I'm going to sort of kick the can down the road a little bit. But if you go to stemchallenge.com, that's my website, after this or whenever, you can find, if you go to the FAQ, you're going to find videos that answer some of those questions about materials, about how to handle STEM challenges in short class periods, some training, there's lots of training there, and ideas you can find, same website, but instead of going to FAQ, I'll go to resources. So one thing I did want to point out about the time obstacle is something that I don't think that I said in the videos that you would find in the FAQ. And it's just sort of a mindset switch a little bit. So since we're at the back to school right now season, we know that a lot of times people will say that if you don't practice your procedures at the beginning of the school year and you don't spend like a good solid week on practicing those procedures, sometimes people say 2 weeks just practicing procedures, you're going to pay for it the rest of the year. So you invest the time up front to save the time down the line, right? So I bring that up because this is a very similar sort of mindset with STEM challenges. If you are incorporating multiple subject areas and you're really tying in your content lessons to match up with your STEM challenges, you are actually investing some time up front, but you're going to gain it on the back end because the students are going to be more engaged in those content lessons. They remember them better because they were engaged. So you have to do less reteaching. So I get that time is an obstacle. And again, on the website under FAQ, there are 2 videos that are about how to fit it in with short class periods and stuff like that. So you can seek that out. You can ask me more questions all the time. I like to answer those in video form. Sometimes I come on live to answer questions. So let me know about that. But today I really want to focus on skeptical administrators because it's a real problem that some people will face, right? And it's not completely invalid. It's not completely invalid. So what I want to do today is I kind of want to talk to you about how I would approach a skeptical administrator. And this actually really, when I looked at my list of ideas and my steps to what I would do, I realized that this works pretty well for anything, not just STEM challenges, but any sort of conflict you might be having with how your teaching philosophy may or may not jive with your administrators, which is a bummer when that happens, I know. So, I know that for me in the past, I've had a couple of instances where I've had some contentious relationships with my principals, and that's just no way to live. It's no way to live for you or your administrator, really. But sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands and figure out how to proceed. And it is a bummer to have to justify your philosophy and your teaching approach because you're a professional, but this is the world we live in. Sometimes we have to do that. So if you are in a situation like that, my number one first step that I always recommend is to remember what your goal is in having a conversation with your administrator about STEM challenges. Your goal is at a minimum to be left alone to teach how you want to teach and how you know your students respond in your classroom. That's what your baseline goal is. At a maximum, it'd be great if you could get some support, right? But let's take things baby steps, one at a time. I just have this little picture. I didn't even mention it. I just had a picture up of a post-STEM challenge where the students were doing a discussion. If you're wondering what that was, they were doing their presentations afterwards. So I thought it'd be something nice to look at since I only have this like quickly, hastily thrown up backdrop right now. I'm redecorating. Okay. Moving on. So number one, remember your goal. The reason that is so important is because if you are a fiery person, as I know I can sometimes be, it can be very easy once you get into the conversation for things to get heated and for you to lose lose sight of what your goal is. And when you do that, you end up undermining that goal, right? So if you know my goal is to come out of this with basically carte blanche to teach how I want to teach, that will help you stay cool, calm, and collected in different situations that might occur. So my first thing, hassle-free STEM, that is my goal. So I go in remembering everything I'm doing in here is to stay cool, calm, and collected so I can teach the way I want to teach. The second thing I would say to do is to ask your administrator to explain what his or her concerns are about STEM challenges. So you want to make sure that they lay everything out for you, because it's important to be able to parse out what is a valid concern and what is not a valid concern. So, and it's also very important for you because step 3 is going to be to establish your common ground. So this is how you start to sort of figure out what are your administrators' potential misconceptions about what STEM challenges are. Or it could just be that your administrator has just seen it done poorly, because it can be done poorly. It can be done in a way that's really very little more than a craftivity. And again, I always say that, and then I always have to like come right in and say there's a place for crafts and there's nothing really wrong with crafts, but they don't bring the rigor and the academic content into your classroom, and that's one of the things your administrator is likely concerned about, right? So you want to make sure you understand the misconceptions or things that might be done poorly, right? What your administrator is likely to say is that it looks like play, it's not a good use of class time, how is it going to lead to their achievement on the tests, how is it going to lead to their learning and their achievement, and they need to understand why it's a good use of time. So once they've laid all that out, you can then go in and establish your common ground with them. You can say, there should be things you can agree with, right? So they probably had a comment about rigor. So you can go, yes, of course. I'm in complete agreement with you. I know my instructional minutes are precious, and I want to make sure that I get everything I can out of them. So, and what else? Anything else that they're concerned about? And that you, of course, every decision you make is about student achievement, right? It's not just fun. You believe in fun when it has substance to back it up, right? So that's number 4. Number 4 is to go in and basically give your professional assessment. So you've established your common ground, but then you say, okay, we share the same goals. I want my students to be engaged. I want them to be doing rigorous work. I want to make sure I cover all my academic content standards. I want to make sure they're achieving. And here's why I've selected STEM challenges as the vehicle to deliver on those goals. And you want to be really clear on how STEM challenges do in fact deliver on those goals. So earlier in the week, I posted a blog post on knowing your whys, the why you do STEM challenges in your class. And that's linked on the page, but I'll link it in after I get off of the live. I'll link it in the comments here as well. But knowing your whys is really important, because you're going to be able to assuage your administrator's fears if you can go in and say with confidence, this is why I've selected them. It wasn't because I thought it was cute, or I thought it was fun, or I wanted to have something to take a photo of to send to the parents. There is research behind this, and it doesn't need to be like formal, I've read this research paper, although certainly if you have done any sort of PD or research or any of that, this is good to bring it in at this point as well, just to validate that this isn't a whim or a fun time thing that has no thought behind it, right? So the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to basically back up your opinion with proof. So your opinion that STEM challenges deliver on all these goals, and I hesitate to call it an opinion, but I will. Then you're going to back it up with your proof, right? So your proof is going to be things from your actual experience. It's going to be things like you can actually ask your administrator to come in and observe. And what I would do is recommend having the administrator observe, figure out how much time he or she can give you, because they're probably not going to come for the full extent of a challenge. And I would recommend for a skeptical administrator not necessarily to bring them in during the build. You might actually want them to come in to see the students present their builds and move straight into their discussion, their record, reflect, and analyze, so they can see what comes afterwards. Because on a lot of administrators' minds, they just think they build it and yay, wasn't that fun and cute, and then they move on. That's a very common misconception. So you want them to see all the things that come behind it. Another thing that you can do is create bulletin boards or wherever you post your student work that shows that analysis that comes afterwards, that shows the record, reflect, analyze piece. You can, if it's practical, write it into your lesson plans where you are connecting content standards that maybe come after the fact as extensions that connect back to the STEM challenges. More proof that you can give them is in the attendance. Sometimes it does impact your attendance. When students know there are going to be STEM challenges, they are less likely to be absent. At least that was my experience when I actually did have to track it. You can do student polls and parent polls. Administrators like to know that parents are happy and students are happy and that they are actually learning things. So that can be helpful as well. I take photos of my students. One thing you can do is actually email your principal and say something like, I'm sure much of what hits your inbox is negative or is about what's going wrong. So I wanted to share with you something that's going right. And then tell them something amazing that happened because of a STEM challenge or during a STEM challenge. That's one of the things I like to do when I'm facilitating, when I walk around and I ask students to kind of tell me what they're doing and tell me about their designs or whatever, and I just do my little group circulation. I usually have a clipboard or a notepad with me, and I'll jot down some things that stand out to me, either as things I want to record so I remember that I had that anecdotal evidence for their growth. And sometimes it's so I remember, I definitely want to remember this amazing moment, so I want to record it and share it with the principal or share it with parents or even just note it for myself so I don't forget it. I had to do that as part of my master's program, and so it just became a habit to continue to do that, and it can be very valuable in many situations, really. But I think that probably, let me make sure I didn't miss any of these photos, hang this stuff up. Oh, and then just making sure your principal understands also what I said earlier about the time situation, which is that, yes, there is some time investment up front, but because I'm tying it into all of these standards-based lessons after the fact, and we have that physical context of the designs in the room, it basically lays a foundation where students have the background information. So if you have a very diverse population, it's very difficult sometimes you really can't assume that students have background information or background knowledge that you can access and activate prior to a lesson. But if you're using your STEM challenges as engagement activities, you're basically laying a groundwork where everybody has some background knowledge, right? So you just need to be able to speak to, for your principal, all the benefits, all your whys. Because most reasonable people, and I know some of you are thinking, but mine's not reasonable. Most reasonable people, if you sit down and have a cool, calm, and collected conversation and you speak as a professional who has done her homework, you're going to be able to continue to use STEM challenges the way you want to, because you have, in fact, been able to lay out why it's more than worthy of your class minutes, your instructional minutes, right? So let me just see if there's anything else I have on here. Know your why, speak to your experiences, research. And you can always, if there's any specific situation that's maybe I didn't cover, or you have a very specific type of contentious relationship with your administrator, you can always comment here. You can reach out to me directly. I might have an idea as to how to approach it, but most things can really be handled with these steps. Remember your goal so you keep your cool, right? Ask what your principal's concerns are, because some of them might be valid and some of them might just be misconceptions about what you're trying to do. Establish your common ground. This is important for all types of negotiations. Figure out what you have in common and then be able to speak to how what you want to do actually goes with what your administrator wants to see happen. Your goals are the same in many ways, right? And then you're going to, after you've established your common ground, your professional assessment backs that up, you just need to provide some proof, right? And I find a lot of this can be done sort of as a preemptive attack. You might not even know if your administrator has an issue with STEM challenges or not. So I always try to, at the beginning of, either at the beginning of a school year, or if just there's a principal switch at some point, or I've switched schools, I make sure pretty much from the get-go to lay down some of those important groundwork pieces. Like, I make sure that my whatever student displays I might have are really the deeper level. I have some photographs because it's nice to see what we're talking about, but I use those record and reflect data analysis type handouts. I connect in what do we learn about after that? What standards were addressed because of this challenge, or in addition to this challenge, or related to this challenge, right? And then I give them some of that, like some of that feel good stuff too. Maybe the results from, a parent just shared this note with me and I thought you might like to see it. I know you hear a lot of bad news. Here's something amazing that happened today. Those little things can go a really long way. So I hope that was helpful. And if you have anything specific that I didn't cover, let me know and I will definitely get back to you. But as far as the other common obstacles, time, materials, training, ideas, a lot of these can at least partially be covered if you go to stemchallenge.com/FAQ. You can also go to the YouTube channel, Feel Good Teaching. You can also tune in here on Facebook. I'm obsessed, so I just spend a whole lot of time creating resources of various types like this one to try to make sure that doing STEM challenges is as painless and easy as possible, because I know all the benefits that come from it. And definitely check out that blog post that's about my STEM challenge whys, because I bet we share quite a few. Let me know. I'll see you next time.